Welcome to Policy on Demand. I'm Sindhu Blume.
And I'm Scott McCandless. It is the week of November 4th, and this is your Monday briefing. We are less than 24 hours away from this year's presidential election, and the race for the White House and control of Congress remains tight.
And if you're looking for solid answers after the polls close Tuesday evening, it's unlikely we'll have them, at least not right away. Joining us today to share their insights on the election landscape are Rohit Kumar and Janice Mays. Rohit, Janice, welcome.
Thanks.
Thank you.
So let me start with you, Rohit. Where do things stand today, and what changes in the last couple of days kind of stand out to you, and are you anticipating any surprises?
Well, I'm not anticipating any additional surprise. I feel like this election has had, or this campaign season has had plenty of surprises, starting with replacing the top of the ticket in July, several assassination attempts against former President Trump, a rally in Madison Square Garden that, for a campaign that had actually been pretty professionally run at the campaign level. The candidate, of course, will say what he's going to say. But, it was sort of a weird own goal, self-inflicted injury, not to vet what everybody was going to say other than the candidate himself. So I think we've had plenty of twists and turns. And look, this is a nip and tuck exercise. I think several people are trying to be bullish about, this is going to happen or that's going to happen, or there's persistent polling error one way or the other. I don't think anybody knows. I am watching Pennsylvania. It is the Keystone State, both in the election and by moniker. And I think it really, for both of the candidates, they win Pennsylvania, their path to 270 gets that much easier. And for both of the candidates, if they don't win Pennsylvania, there is a path to 270. It is just much more challenging for both. So all eyes on Pennsylvania. There's a reason why the candidates have basically camped out there. The VP candidates have camped out there. I mean, they're all looking at the same numbers that we're looking at.
I think that's absolutely right. It's an unknown to me. I'm just watching it like everybody else at this point. It may take a few days to know some parts of it too.
Well, Janice, maybe turning to some of those everybody else's. Can you think a little bit from the lens of the companies? What are some of the questions you're getting from them, and what are some of the things they might expect as they look at this election over the next few days?
Just like all the rest of us, business is confused. They don't like the uncertainty, and they don't like this wide divergence on policy issues between the two main candidates here. So they are looking ahead, and a lot of those questions are about taxes. These two candidates are very different on taxes, and so business is hoping that after this election, it will at least become clear to them the broad path. You still won't know, will deficits matter? How much can be done in tax issues this coming year? But they're going to have some sense of direction, and they will begin to know who do they want to advocate with to try to address the policy concerns that they have. So business is kind of ready for this to be over too. They've done their scenario planning. Now they want to apply some of it.
Yeah, one thing that I've noticed is, in a world where Vice President Harris becomes President Harris, there's clearly pressure on the headline corporate rate. And that's something that most people, a tax director or a CFO, you can understand that. Like, you just sort of figure out, if the rate goes to 23 or 25, what does this mean for me? There's angst about the potential for tariffs under a Trump administration, but I think it's just less well understood, in part because not everybody has total insight into what is my supply chain and what might be subject to the tariffs. The tariff policy is not as sort of fully described and as fulsomely described as a corporate rate increase, which is relatively straightforward. And so my sense is, while there's angst on tariffs, it's not rising to the forefront quite as much, not because it's not real, but because it's just not as well understood. The policy isn't fully vetted. And I think even just in terms of intuitively, what does this mean to the company? It's a little bit harder to understand. But I think obviously if Trump wins, that will change. People will start to spend a lot of time thinking about what the tariff play might look like. What does that mean for the company? And more importantly, perhaps for companies that aren't directly affected by tariffs, what does the retaliation look like? And even if I'm not on the front end victim of tariffs, my stuff gets more expensive. Am I a second order victim because there's some retaliation that sweeps me in?
All right, let's talk about bellwether races and which ones you're watching. Rohit, let's start with you.
Look, I'm a creature of the Senate, so I am very focused on the Senate. I also think it is the thing that we're likely to know the first of all the things, House, Senate, and White House. So Montana is the tipping point state, I think, for Senate control, where if the Republican wins, Republicans are likely to take the Senate. But you'd also keep an eye on Florida, Texas, and Nebraska, which are three states that Democrats kind of relatively late in the game tried to go on offense, although the candidate in Nebraska is running as independent, has said he would not caucus with Senate Democrats. there are lots of people that are like, I'm not going to caucus with anybody. That's not real. You end up caucusing with somebody. And so we'll have to see how that,
I mean, it's more
if he
important.
wins.
They feel like they're keeping Republicans from having the victory than they've had a victory themselves.
That's right.
It's about numbers.
It's about numbers. Yeah. It would. And look, in a world where Senator Fisher loses, which I don't think is super likely, but it's certainly not out of the question.
Mm-hmm.
And so Osborne, not Coach Osborne, but a different Osborne would have, there's maybe some name confusion going on in the state. If he is the 50th vote, he will have a ton of power.
Yes.
In order to determine effectively control of the Senate. So I'm watching those Senate races, and then I'm keeping an eye. The Republican candidates in the blue wall states of Wisconsin and Michigan, and to a lesser degree in Pennsylvania, have been closing late. Now that might be just name ID coming up, but I'm sort of watching. I'm really focused on these Senate races because I feel like if we just had one thing that we knew on Wednesday, it would be helpful in terms of planning out the rest.
I'm watching the presidential candidates in the battleground states because I think the House could follow there. I mean, it is possible Republicans could run the table if former President Trump wins. It's possible Democrats could keep the House and the presidency if Kamala Harris wins. And in that case, there will be races like those California races in the House that we won't know for a while. So I do think Rohit's right. It will lag a bit on some of this other stuff.
Janice, earlier you had a great comment about scenario planning, and now companies just want to apply. Could you talk through some of the tax policy permutations that we might see, at least at the top level, heading into next year?
It is very rare that you go into the election knowing you're going to have to deal with taxes. And those expirations from 2017's TCJA mean we do have to deal with that. Either you choose to let them expire, which is, I think, still very unlikely, or you figure out how to deal with it. And what happens in this election will affect both the policy and the process that's used to try to address those big changes. And they are coming in some context. If one party runs the table, they'll try to use that budget reconciliation process where they only need 51 votes in the Senate. And potentially you could do something that's very partisan. The president, a Republican House and a Republican Senate, or vice versa with Democrats, they can get something done if they can stay united internally. But if it's a split government, it's a very different scenario. They still have to address all of these issues, but they've got to figure out how to compromise across lines, because in the Senate, they would need 60 votes. Unless they change those internal rules, I'm still a creature of the Senate too, and don't think that happens right away. I think they keep that 60 vote margin because one day the other side will be in the minority again, and they want to be players in that context. So to get to 60 votes, you've got to have something that passes the House, something that gets 60 plus votes in the Senate. So divided and found an answer there, and then the president has to sign that. So I think it's very different policies, but it's very seldom we're guaranteed to look at these things. These are major. Most things, like Rohit mentioned, the corporate rate, aren't necessarily on the table, but business is concerned they'll be used to pay for other things, because the unknown, no matter who wins, is how much do deficits matter. This is a costly scenario to try to do this. And how much will deficits limit what they do, and where will they look? Will they shorten tax breaks? Will they look at tariffs and see if they can count some of that money somehow? Will they find things they want to raise money out of, like corporations, to pay for individual and pass-through entity issues they care about? So lots coming, guaranteed to come.
All right. And I think I can safely say that all of us live in a town where it is a fun tradition to gather your friends together and watch the State of the Union address, or watch for election results, or at least that's what I've been doing. So I want to find out what you're going to be doing tomorrow night, where are you going to be, and then a follow-up question, which is, what is your current state of mind as it relates to the election, in one word, and no follow-up from us? Janice, let's start with you.
I am contrarian. I will be watching it all by myself, so I can throw things, yell, cry, whatever. Then I'll try to go to bed at a reasonable hour because I won't know the answers. Try to get up early and figure out those answers. And my one word at the moment truly is exhausted.
Rohit?
So I'm going to play tennis with friends tomorrow night. Physical exercise is sort of how I manage stress and anxiety. And then I'm going to come home. I'll probably watch results for a little while. And then I'm going to take like an elephant dose of melatonin and go to sleep, because I have to function on Wednesday. So I can't stay up until 3 or 4 in the morning. And I've made peace with the fact that my watching does not change the outcome.
Right.
It's not like sports, where if I don't watch my team and they lose, that's my fault. This one is totally outside of my ability to control. And I'm anxious, but anxious for it to be over, not anxious
Right.
about the result.
Right. Well, you're both going to be back here Wednesday to do election watch, so sleep is very important.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you both. And for our viewers, for a look at the election and the economy from a geopolitical lens, check out a special extended interview with Roz Brooks and Dr. Alexis Crow, PwC's chief economist, linked in the description of this episode, along with the latest Week in Review with Andrew Pryor.
Our election coverage continues this week with a new episode of Election Watch, as I just mentioned, with Rohit and Janice, so look for that on Wednesday. We so appreciate you spending this time with us and hope you have a great week. Take care.